Summary of the TCE stuff. And this again, Susan Chapnick. Susan. Is something Susan particularly asked about, so we want to make sure that we have it. In general, and I'd like to hear your impressions of people that have sites that are working through the processes for this. In general, I think this work is going well. One of the things we're trying to impress, certainly upon our staff, and we've talked about here, is that our goal is to identify potential exposures of concern, and the goal is to get information, to rule them in or rule them out, and if there is an exposure that might be posing a risk, to get it addressed as quickly as possible. And the goal is not to get audit meetings, the goal is not to get enforcement meetings, it's to work with the PRP, particularly for the formerly closed sites, but not limited to that, to get the work done and to do the evaluation. So part of that is, DEP has been doing a lot of sampling work. We're willing and able to step up and get that necessary preliminary information to do the rule in, rule out work. And if we don't find something, that's great. If we do, then to work with the PRP on what the next steps will be. So we're willing to put our time and our money into that preliminary investigation to work with people that are out there to identify potential problems and to rule out sites to give people a level of comfort that, in fact, there is no ongoing exposures or risk of concern. And the past has, if we've talked about it being closed sites, a lot of we've talked about the closed sites, and they're out there about DEP's closed site effort. And I would actually put it in better perspective. Oh, thank you. I didn't even notice that.
That's one of the spill.
Yeah, that was, so this is like a $800. It's not just closed sites, and one of the things I want to do today is go through some of the examples, some generic descriptions of the sites that we're working on, and highlight that by focusing on DEP's closed site efforts, people are actually missing a lot of work that's being done at TCE sites. I view it as DEP is focused on TCE sites, whatever the flavor is. And with the same goal of identifying those potential exposures. And the laundry list of how they come to us, come to our attention, where they show up, and why they may still be problematic. We have downgrading property status sites. People do sampling, they point the finger, upgraded, you may have a known site, or they may not. And then it becomes a question of site discovery. Where is the stuff coming from? And so you have not only dealing with the downgrading property that might have big protrusion issues and an obligation to deal with them, but finding out where that source is. And unfortunately, the source may not be the next property up. It may be some distance away. So what we're finding are situations where we have several properties that are in between the source in that original notification. And that's a lot of time and effort. Yes.
I think you want us to talk, right? This partial permanent solution.
I'm not even there yet. Okay, go.
You are there. It's a closed site.
I wanted to keep talking.
Should I keep talking?
Go ahead. Yes.
All right. I've got a partial closed site, and of course we pointed fingers at the old company next door, which is not upgrading, but it's downgraded, so I can't file a DBS. I'm very confident in my conceptual site model based upon all the history we did for the company for 50 plus years, so it's kind of, if you will, spilling over the property line upgrading. So I couldn't do a DBS, so I did a partial permanent solution. It's problematic. That's the only tool I had to work with was the partial permanent solution. That's problematic because the site's not closed. So they start haunting the PRP that took responsibility for that portion of the disposal site. They got a permanent solution with no conditions. So now they're threatening, phase one, fees.
Who are they? Us?
Yes. Sorry. Threatening, well, the site's not closed. Now, he said, well, go after the abutter. And my opinion's very clear in there. No, they won't go after the abutter. Their problem is it's not closed. So I touched base with Rob Lucci, just in case anybody's in the same position. Rob Lucci, if you check the box, eligible person on the permanent solution, didn't cause the release, he won't bill. So it's not an issue. But that's problematic, because that site's not closed, the department's not addressing it, and so we have no way to close out that site. So I said, DEP, you're done, I'm done with you, because this is my only tool. This is my only tool. This is not a technical issue, this is an administrative issue, which is not resolved.
Okay. I think there are several things in there. None of which necessarily related to TCE.
Just call it TCE.
I know. Just remarking on that. But let me see if I get the basic.
It's a do loop.
Well, it's a do loop, but kind of the box that to put it in kind of where can we have discussions, because I can't promise anything about because I'm not sure that I completely understand it. Again, I'll look at the tape. But it's what I'm hearing is that it's a situation that doesn't fit the downgrading property status, so you can't avail yourself of those nice, clear endpoints, liability endpoints for the property, but at the same time, there's no control over the overall site that would allow your client to reach a permanent solution. But since they were the people that originally notified, they're being held responsible by the department for the entire site closure, even though there's inability to actually close the entire site. And kind of structurally and administratively, is there a way that DEP can recognize that kind of condition? And one thing would be how widespread is this? What are the options available to DEP? What's the options available for your particular client to deal with it? And kind of off on the side is the things like fees, which are very important to the clients. That's probably the least of my worries for this. It's more the bigger administrative, who has liability and how do we get the entire site assessed and cleaned up. The fee is just one little piece of that, but I know it's important to clients. So, having kind of made sure that that's on the record, that's one of the things that we can have more discussions about. And
Rob's got his arms wrapped around it. I was happy to hear that. Rob says, I will not bill for this site.
Rob not billing for the site is only one piece of what I would take to be a bigger problem.
Yes.
Because Rob not billing for the site doesn't get the site cleaned up, which would be my goal there, and have the right people taking responsibility for that. So, a discussion for a different time.
Sorry.
But no. It's something. It's a good topic, and it's something that we can have on the table and make sure that it's there. It's a way of kind of raising issues.
I guess I just want to say that client should be rewarded for complying with the MCP instead of punished with fees and threats that they still have to go and clean up the entire site.
All property.
Right. It's crazy. Doesn't fit.
There's probably several other situations that kind of fit that general description of people should be rewarded rather than punished. And in general, we would like to do that.
That was what the parcel was all about, Paul, from the very beginning, was rewarding people. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Not to speak for Ms. Chapman, I can do louder than that. I can still not to speak for Ms. Chapman, but again, I think the original conversation had come up about the department's allocation of resources, and particularly in what might be called environmental justice areas that might have these exposures. So there was some discussion of the timeliness of this, and maybe you can comment on that since it's been about 6 months since that question.
Yes,
lot of work in Newton, maybe less than Roxbury.
No, well, the comment, which was not close enough to the microphone, was maybe a lot of work in Newton, less in West Roxbury. Part of it is, where does the review of the sites lead you? And our focus is on exposure and the potential risk and who is being exposed. And there are a couple things that we do take into account. One is that the majority of our sites are weighted to the Northeast region and weighted to, statewide, weighted to urban areas. TC sites in particular are weighted more towards former industrial areas, many of which may have been redeveloped or may be adjacent to lower income homes. Our goal is, in reviewing all of the TCE sites that we can find, and as a side note, we're still, our data systems being what they are, we're still kind of identifying sites that have TCE, historic TCE, and pulling up the records and doing initial screenings on them. It's a never-ending effort, and we're doing that across the board. Almost by definition, these sites are ending up in former industrial areas, in more urban areas. But we're not going to not work on a site because it's located in Newton versus some other location. If there's potential, and the Newton case is, obviously John talked about that. Anybody wants to go and watch it from last November, I think, or October. It's a great discussion. And there's a lot of work being done there, and a lot of progress is being made that I hope to get John to come back maybe later this fall to update everybody on. But there's a large number of people that were being exposed, and the work there is preventing risk and preventing exposure. We're also doing a lot of work in namely low-income city. Fall River,
Taunton, New Bedford.
Fall River, Taunton, New Bedford, Framingham, Lawrence, Lowell, Springfield, Worcester. We have them all, and we're working on them all, and we're prioritizing them by the levels that we're seeing in the documents, and trying to get at the ones that have potential for the greatest risk first, and throwing a lot of resources at them. So we have staff that are fully occupied doing this. So I believe we're committing the appropriate resources to that while doing other things that we still have to do. And recognizing that there is an environmental justice component, but I think that's also that is taken into, I'm not sure what the exact words should be, but the nature of the sources tend to be lead to them to be located in environmental justice areas anyway, and I think that's kind of the nature of our program.
So first of all, I know you know that I'm working with the health department in Framingham, and we'd like to thank Northeast Region. They've been very attentive to a lot of environmental justice. We have the southeast part of Framingham meets what used to be all four: environmental justice, low-income, foreign-born, non-English speaking, and income inequality. So that's been really good. But I remember some discussion about you were going to reach out to health departments or boards of health about sites in their town, and I'm wondering if you've gone any farther with that.
Well, right now I think it's on a case-by-case basis that the regional staff, I'm looking back at Gerard leading the regional staff in the room, our Deputy Regional Director, Gerard Martin. That would be we've done the outreach kind of on a global scale with the Mass Health Officers Associations and the briefings that we do for them, and the trainings we do for them. And on a case-by-case basis now, the boards of health are notified. We work closely with them. Some are more invested into it than others. So it's kind of on a case-by-case basis about how much they are involved, but they are certainly involved in the cases.
You might want to do MAHB also, Association of Health Boards, because that's where the boards of health go.
MAHB. Okay.
Paul, I know the LSPA is looking to do a presentation in November to those groups, and we're considering doing a case study. That might be an opportunity to collaborate and talk specifically about vapor intrusion to a wide audience.
We would love to. The suggestion was that the LSPA is going to do outreach to the boards of health.
Yeah,
both groups,
associations, right?
And we would be interested in participating in that. Okay, the point of this. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, just two questions. I was curious how many sites total, if you have like a general number for how many you've reached out to so far. I know that it sounds like with these new sites and multiple properties being involved, the total possible number has grown. I'm just curious the scale that's been rolled out. And then I have a second question if you want to answer.
No, you have the microphone.
Okay. The second question is, I was just curious about the range of outcomes that you've seen so far at some of these sites. If it's like one indoor sampling event and it's been resolved in 2 days, and either the other end of that spectrum.
I like the second question best because that's going to be later. The first one, the numbers, they continue to grow. As I said, we keep thinking of different ways of querying the database, and particularly the universe that we're looking at now is kind of old ones that kind of the only thing that got in there was like unknown contaminant back from 1989, and so we're going back through there and using different tools to try to identify, things in a way that's easier than just going one by one through all the sites. But at some level, at some point, we get down to that. And they're running, I think, and these are just very rough numbers, maybe of the old TCE sites, maybe 1 in 5 trip the criteria that we're using for the initial screening to kind of warrant a more detailed look. So if you end up with, I think the numbers we were using before was about 1,000 sites statewide, so probably a little bit more than that now. So you could end up with statewide 200, 250 sites that require an additional level of paper review. And then to kind of pull it out and do read through the entire file, and then I don't know, maybe 1 in 5 of those, Gerard, such that we would recommend going out and doing additional sampling.
But so how many so far have you contacted? I was just curious.
Well, the snapshot, they're working on the complicated, the higher risk ones, the ones with the higher remaining levels first, and doing that. So it's each region, I would say maybe the top 10% of them.
It's like 20 to 25?
Well, probably a little bit more than that. The Northeast region alone probably has more than that. That they're actually.
So is it like 100 maybe?
The initial outreach to, and I'm going to describe so you get an idea of the process and kind of the level of care and feeding that they take. And I say that partly because I'm saying maybe 10%, probably a little bit more than that, maybe 15% of those. So maybe statewide, we're actively working on 30 to 40 sites, TCE sites at the time, and by picking off the ones that are the highest risk, I mean, frankly, it's a lot of DEP resources go into it. We can't, there's a lot of involvement and a lot of issues that come up that require time. So it's not like we can grab all of them, because then you're not giving the appropriate attention to any of them. And hopefully at some point, as we work our way through the process, and you'll see as I go through the examples, even with the ones that we view as being a high potential risk, we're identifying some that require additional work, and we're finding some that don't. And what we're trying to do is learn the lessons for what is that breaking point, and what are the characteristics, so that we can better screen and reach a point where we can say, we're probably have dealt with all of the higher risk or higher potential risk sites. And with that, Lisa, what's that?
Just one quick follow-up. So I think, did you mention something like maybe 20% of the sites that you've picked, which are already, focusing on the potential highest risk, which is either high concentration and sensitive receptors, or one or the other? If only 20% of them maybe needed additional work and follow-up and potentially some kind of mitigation down the road, and those are the highest risk, I mean, I would hope also that maybe DEP will take a look at things like the subslant soil gas levels at those sites versus, indoor air. And I think even Andy Freeman said a year or two ago during one of the trainings that, right now that soil gas subslat screening level for TCE is really tiny. And, I've done a lot of sampling that seems to show that, generally at those kind of levels, you're not seeing a complete pathway. So is DEP considering taking some of this actual data that they now have from these higher risk sites that they've, pinpointed, and maybe going to try and calibrate some of the numbers that we're using to trigger things like mitigation or remedial action?
Well, no, the answer is yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's a nice, simple answer. The side was, the researcher in says that, that's really what I want to spend the next few months doing, because it's interesting, it's useful, and there's a lot of information there. The program manager in me says I have a limited number of staff, and at the moment, I'm assigning them to site work to shepherd the individual sites through the process, and basically you're creating this data,
Right.
but we don't have the resources to do both at the same time.
Would it be smart?
And that's-
I'll help you.
Seriously, would the LSPA be able to help you?
I mean, the
Yeah, I've heard of that before, though.
West?
well, the
West. Wake up. West. Wake up, West. No.
there are a variety of different things. There's the LSPA is often very generous in their not clients, their membership time and energy. NIOP as well has volunteered for historic fill work, gathering data, and we have great hopes for that. So there, those partners. We also have interns that are potential. We have the BU School of Public Health is looking for projects for their students for classes. So there are a lot of things like that. The problem is, and what we have to balance, is that it still takes a lot of DEP time. And the people that are involved in that and whose time is needed are the same people that are doing site work. And if you've ever worked with interns, they're great, but God, they take a lot of time. and that's if you do it right, for them and to benefit you, and that takes time, and it's not free labor. It often takes the same amount of time as if you do it yourself, and that's a good thing because it's a worthwhile project for them. But it's not the panacea for getting things like that done in the absence of DEP resources. So this is a very successful slide because obviously it created a lot of discussion. But But it is kind of a laundry list of the universe of sites that we're working on, and frankly, I don't really care whether it's an old site or a brand new site that came in. If there's potential for TC exposure, we're not prioritizing one over the other, we're prioritizing by what kind of threat they are. So the whole old site stuff versus new site, some of the worst are the downgrading property sites that have been sitting there with a finger pointing somewhere up gradient. We don't know where it came from. It's not really an old closed site, but it's something that we really need to be looking at, and we are. So we're trying to prioritize all of them somehow. And so these are the things that come up that we have them. So some of the examples, because I did want to give you a feel that was a perfect leading question. So the partial permanent solution example. So the site had filed a partial permanent solution for some of the properties, and we had come to learn that they were nearing a permanent solution. One of the things we were going to do is make sure when you go back and get a permanent solution for the entire site that you're taking into account and rethinking about this partial permanent solution, because the site is not closed yet. Although, sometimes it's easy to just kind of, we partially closed that part of it there, we don't have to worry about it anymore, to make sure that everything is appropriate. I contacted the PRP, had a technical meeting, not an audit, not an enforcement conference, but here's the path to move ahead. You're moving ahead. You're looking for a permanent solution. Have you considered these potential exposures? There are 3 residents, 2 commercial properties that needed more investigation for the TCE potential exposures. And one of the things here and in other situations that we're coming at that's taking a lot of our time and taking a lot of your time is the access issues. And that's one of the things to stress that we think it's a potential problem, a potential risk. In this case, we have the PRP that is willing and able to do the work and wanting to do the work and think that it's potential risk, potential issue that they want to deal with, and getting access to the individual homes or buildings, properties can be problematic, and that may be the rate limiting step for much of the work, convincing the people that are potentially exposed that it's in there, about the benefits of sampling and what will happen, and it is a lot of hand-holding, it's a lot of explanation that's needed, and that's where a lot of our staff time does go. We have an example of NiceLookin Inquiry. It was more kind of an anonymous dropping a dime, I think is another way of looking at it, about an old site, 1999 B1 REO, that was close to a daycare with TCE that was left behind, residual TCE, or actually B1, so it posed no significant risk at the time, so no remedial work was actually done. Look and file, soil gas 22,000 micrograms per cubic meter, a bit high in the old data, and so staff went out, and the first thing, which was a bit of a relief, was that the daycare that had been there was gone. So no daycare, but there was a restaurant, so commercial property nearby, potential exposure. DEP, because we're interested in finding out whether or not there's exposure. We went out, sampled the restaurant indoor air, found low levels of TCE, but nothing that posed a significant risk. Gave the restaurant owner the sampling results, and no further investigation was determined to be needed. So we had some concerns. It was raised to us. It wasn't something that it was flagged necessarily in the initial screening, and when that investigated, found that there wasn't a problem. We were able to close the books on it. So a happy ending in that one. Downgrading property status sites are pretty typical. So we received a new downgrading property status submittal, TC groundwater. We reviewed the information as it came in, felt that there was sufficient information to justify a notice of responsibility to the upgrading property, potential source property. Indoor air sampling was done, but there was no imminent hazard because of the nature of the people occupying the building. No full-time workers, and work is continuing on under the MCP. So the immediate question of, is there an imminent hazard? Is there something that has to be addressed immediately, bringing in air purifiers or an IRA for sub-slab systems? The answer was no. But it doesn't mean that the site is clean. The site still has to go through the normal process and do the site investigation. Eventually, demonstrate that they have a level of no significant risk with or without remediation. We'll see what it actually comes of it. So they're on course for doing the phase one, the source property, the people that got the NOR, and the DPS property will be folded into that. So a good success story. The work, there's still a potential for a problem, but it's not one that is rising to the level of immediate response action. This is more of what people were thinking about for this work, screening of the closed site. This one that closed in 2002 with the A2 REO, so no condition. We did the file review, identified downgradient property, ground gradient wells that had elevated levels of TCE that were near residences. We contacted the PRP, sent them called them, sent them the in fact why we were looking at the past information, what our concerns were. The PRP declined to do the work themselves. And again, our goal is to identify whether or not there's exposure. So that's fine. We have the ability, we have the resources to get that information. We're not going to wait. It's not one of these things that we're interested in strong-arming the PRP to do that work, which can be a lengthy process. We'll just go ahead and get the data ourselves. That's the goal. We did sub-slab and indoor air sampling. How did I miss what the actual result was?
Yeah, you did.
This is copying and pasting from some of the summaries that were provided to me. So I think based on what I wrote, and this was late last night, I think the follow-up work would probably must be that they had identified some concentrations that required additional follow-up work, probably additional indoor air sampling. I don't think it's immediate installation of the sub-slab systems, but it's work that additional work still needs to be done with this. Abandoned property. This is a good one. Been in the system for a long, long, long time. Many of you probably worked on it. With tens of milligrams per liter of TCE. But luckily it's flowing into off-property wetland, the property is vacant, so there is not an imminent hazard due to TCE in the indoor air. And this is one of these things where there's high levels of contamination, a variety of potential problems, and it's being nominated to the national priorities list to actually do work. We'll put it on the Superfund list, and that should happen this fall. Okay, so that's a range of things. I mean, there are things like the Newton site where we're doing a lot of work putting in sub-slab systems. There's a number of sites that you guys are working on where you're putting in sub-slab systems. There's a wide range of them. So we are finding sites that we go out, we do the sampling, no additional work is needed. Sites that we go out and do the sampling, it's not an imminent hazard, but additional work needs to be done to either complete the investigation or bring it to a permanent solution. We have sites where we go, we sample, there are imminent hazards, and either the PRP or DEP will do the work. It happens both ways. And we have some that are on the NPL or will be on the NPL, and we'll push it off to EPA. But if there had been potential exposures there, we would have dealt with them. Even for sites that are proposed to the NPL, we work with EPA to do, see if we can get them to do removal actions, because they have money that they can spend on certain things. We have money we can spend on certain things. So we'll work together, whether it's on NPL sites, whether it's on just 21E sites, that we can request EPA's assistance without bumping it to the Superfund program. Through the removal actions. We have sites that we're working with EPA on record corrective action, that we're looking at vapor intrusion in indoor air. So there are a lot of different boxes that these sites fit in, which makes the work interesting because they are not cookie cutter. I mean, you know that. You have the same experience in working at these sites. It would be nice and easy and boring if they were all the same and all followed the same process. But the fact that they aren't, and each one kind of leads to a different outcome and a different flavor of it, means that there's a lot of sites that are being made, a lot of DEP input, and a lot of input from you guys on work. So it's keeping us busy.
Paul, you mentioned earlier that for some of the downgrading property status sites, the source may not just be the next property, but maybe something further upstream. How do you go about identifying where that comes from? So you have a DPS, and now you need to find out who's responsible for that. Do you just start giving NORs to the neighbors and see where it goes from there, or how do you go about that process?
That would work.
You've done it.
I think we do it different ways. I think that, in some ways, I'm going to hunt that to when we get John to come back to talk about the Newton site, because I think that's a great example of it. But from what you may remember from last year when you talked about it, it really is kind of what we're doing with that site is we're putting in wells, we're doing subslab sampling, we're doing indoor air sampling to define the extent of the flow. And for Newton, I believe you can look at it in going two directions. One is you're trying to define the extent of contamination and where that plume is and what houses are being affected. So you're looking at it both as the plume is downgraded to kind of find how many homes are affected downgraded. So there's work going in that direction, and then work going up gradient as well, and then trying to use that information to identify potential sources. And Newton has industrial and they might not be environmental justice communities, but there are industrial locations, industrial areas in Newton, and it's in this case it wasn't as easy as there's that one potential source surrounded by the 9 open space or residential areas. There are a lot of potential sources, and before we get to the point of identifying a source and giving them an NOR, we're doing a lot of work to lay the groundwork for that. There are cases perhaps, and at least I don't know the example and I don't want to know, but where it seems like the first person up gradient, or the first property up gradient seems a likely responsible source, and give the NOR because it makes sense. And then they do work and they point the finger up gradient as well. And then they do, because they look like an obvious potential source, and they do work and they point the finger up gradient. And there are those as well. And I would venture to guess that the reason that the NOR is given is that there was at least sufficient information and use of the property to indicate that they are at least a potential source. We don't just. And some people might want us to. The people with the downgrading process just hand out the NORs until you find the right person. But generally, I don't think we do that.
And then in addition to possibly collecting groundwater data ourselves, we can issue RFIs to companies that are upgrading it to see what their history was, to see if they've ever used this, to see if they've ever done environmental sampling. And we get a lot of information that way that helps us out with a DPS review.
Yes, I was going to get to RFI later. So keep that in mind. And How are we doing? And this is fun. I could do this all day. And you know that. So we'll get to the RFI because but I have a better example of the RFI.
Okay.
Lisa is going to come. She has 5 minutes before she has to leave.